Hello comrades, you are watching RedIvan Military, and today we'll talk about the uniforms and equipment of the Ukrainian Armed Forces contingent in Iraq from 2003 to 2005. But before we begin, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to my channel, share this video with your friends, and also subscribe to my Instagram. It all started in the spring of 2003, when the United States and its allies had already overthrown the Saddam Hussein's regime. The stabilization phase loomed ahead: chaos, insurgents, terrorist attacks. Ukraine, under President Leonid Kuchma, decided to join. Clearly, Gangadze has nothing to do with it. On June 5, 2003, the Verkhovna Rada ratified the decree on sending troops. The majority voted in favor. Only the communists and socialists were against. And on August 7, the first echelons from Kiev and Nikolaev moved to Kuwait, with the full arrival of the contingent by the end of August. The core of the contingent was the 5th Separate Mechanized Brigade from Vinnytsia, the elite of the Ukrainian ground forces, manned by volunteers: 1,333 soldiers, 228 surgeons, 111 warrant officers, and 270 officers, equipped with BTR-80, BRDM-2, Kras trucks, artillery, and engineering vehicles. Base: Vasit Province, city of Kut, under the command of the Polish division. In 2004 it was replaced by the 6th Brigade and then by the 7th Brigade. At its peak in 2004, 1,600–1,700 fighters. In total, over the years, about 5–6,000 Ukrainians passed through Iraq. After 2005, with the new president Yushchenko, the numbers decreased, first to 900, then to 8, and by December 2005, almost all were withdrawn. Only 40 instructors remained in Aldiavia until 2008. The full withdrawal occurred on December 9, 2008. This was Ukraine's largest overseas operation since independence. Officially, Ukraine called it a peacekeeping operation, blue flags, humanitarian aid, but this is not entirely accurate. There was no UN resolution for the invasion, only for inspections, so coalition acted without sanction. Nevertheless, Ukraine did not participate in the 2003 assault and mainly engaged in stabilizing the situation, so the nature of the activities can still be called peacekeeping. The main tasks were guarding objects, patrolling, humanitarian aid, demining, escorting convoys, building bridges, distributing food and medicine. They transferred weapons to the police, trained Iraqi border guards. In half a year of 2004, they prepared 600 fighters. Nevertheless, there were serious battles. On April 6, 2004, the first major battle in Kut against Muqtada al-Sadr's Mahdi Army. Ukrainians, together with the British and Americans, fought off 4 hours, lost 2. There were ambushes, explosions, and shootouts with militants. I managed to talk with 2 veterans from the Ukrainian contingent. One was in the first rotation as the part of the 5th Separate Mechanized Brigade. Second one was there between 2004 and 2005. Both decided to remain incognito, but I want to say thanks to both of them. Without their help, this video would not be that accurate. Also, I want to say thank you to our subscriber Daniil for some pictures. And now let's begin, and we'll begin with the headgear. The troops of the first rotation were issued 2 bunny hats of Soviet cut, in desert Dubok for everyday wear, and a variant made of ripstop fabric in woodland Bhutan for returning. Starting from the second rotation, they were only issued 1 bunny hat in desert Dubok, this time made of ripstop fabric. At some point, American BDU caps in tricolor desert camouflage were received for departure home. On photos of arriving officials and senior officers, one could encounter caps in Desert Dubok, a variant for higher officers, as in this picture, or BDU format cap, like mine. But the contingent practically had none of this. I managed to find only one picture of a BDU style cap. The overwhelming majority of fighters wore boonie hats. Exclusively due to the impossibility to find a boonie, I will demonstrate the suit with a cap. Throughout the entire conflict, fighters actively used Soviet medical bandanas as headgear. In winter, black knitted caps were issued. As a private case, I came across one photo of an NBC defense fighter in a boonie in orange Ukrainian Bhutan. Those had been issued earlier to peacekeepers in Lebanon. The NBC troops themselves were still dressed as in Lebanon. They were re-outfitted on the go. T-shirts. The first rotation was issued brown tank tops and olive green t-shirts. Underpants and undershirts were also olive green. Later they began receiving brown t-shirts and brown tank tops, as well as brown underpants and brown undershirts. Throughout the entire conflict, airborne troops and reconnaissance wore tельняшкас. Uniforms. The first rotation was issued 2 sets of uniforms in desert version of Dubok camouflage and 1 set of classic Dubok for return. Interestingly, the early version of desert Dubok used fabric that was not ripstop. The uniform was very comfortable to wear, but the fabric was low quality. It shrank, faded when washed, and the threads tore. But the set in woodland Dubok, or more correctly in Bhutan U, was already made of ripstop fabric. NBC troops were still wearing out woodland Dubok as a substitute. From 2004, 2 sets of uniforms in desert Dubok made of ripstop fabric, like mine, were issued, and also a set of American uniform in tricolor desert camouflage for return. On some pictures you can notice hand-sewn shoulder straps for ranks. The waffle fabric in desert Dubok is quite pleasant to the touch. In my opinion, this is the best Ukrainian fabric before 2014, but the buttons still fly off on their own. Let's discuss the suit in more details. Jacket. Essentially, this is a simplified Afghanka. Classic collar. Shoulder straps for rank placement. The jacket has 4 front pockets with Velcro, 2 sleeve pockets with Velcro. Unlike on the original Afghanka, plaid on the back is absent. 4 ventilation holes under the armpits, oval reinforcements on the elbows. Interestingly, cuffs like on the American BDU uniform. Jacket fastens with buttons. Inside on the left is a document pocket, waist drawstring, and the drawstring at the bottom of the jacket. Trousers. Fly with button closure. 2 front slash pockets. Sewn in creases in the Soviet tradition. Double belt loops for a white belt and trouser belt, but designed differently compared to the Soviet ones. Button adjustment at the waist. Rear reinforcement more reminiscent of the American one on BDU. Cargo pockets are absent. Reinforcements at the knee area. Drawstrings and retainers at the bottom of the legs. There were several variations of shades in the desert Dubok camouflage pattern. In addition to the standard uniform in desert Dubok, there was also a variant for senior officers with a belly pocket and an internal holster. General Kuzmuk and other high-ranking delegates arrived in Iraq wearing such. Ukraine also produced statutory winter jackets in desert pattern. One was issued without trousers, a very successful model. I even came across a photo of one being used during the ATO. Interestingly, the first rotation was issued 1 liner but 2 covers, desert and woodland. There were also shorts, but their use was limited to some NBC troops. According to veterans' recollections, a sand-colored tracksuit, shorts and sneakers were also issued Interestingly, first rotation was forced to pay for them. Also in some photographs, fighters are dressed in KZS suit, in the Soviet tradition. Some fighters in ordinary woodland Dubok, usually NBC troops. As we said earlier, the NBC troops were re-outfitted on the go, and they wore woodland Dubok as a substitute. There is also one photo of a reconnaissance fighter in woodland Dubok. Possibly in this case, woodland Dubok was better suited to the specifics of the task. Speaking about the contingent in Iraq, I can't fail to mention the interesting Mabuta suit in desert 4-color DPM pattern produced by Temp-3000. Such were issued to SBU fighters. My friend Timur has one, so maybe we'll make a separate video about it one day. Belts. No one really wore a belt over the jacket, but officers often wore Soviet brown leather belts as a trouser belt for holster placement. Footwear. The first rotation was issued with 2 pairs of boots. Classic Talan Riflenki boots. These are solid black leather boots with an American Panama sole and a quick lacing system. And all black tropical boots with textile inserts. Sand-colored boots were not issued, but one could trade with the Americans or buy them at the market from Iraqis, sometimes with blood traces. From 2004, 2 pairs of suede boots in sand color were issued to the troops. As far as I know, they were produced by Temp-3000. Later, fighters from the 7th Brigade got a pair of American boots, body armor, and we'll start with helmets. The first rotation was issued black Kaska-M helmets. Starting in 2004, Kaska-1M helmets were brought to Iraq. Both helmets were made of Armament at the Temp-3000 enterprise. They are easy to distinguish even in a cover by the characteristic suspension system of the Kaska-M helmet. In the period from 2003 to 2005, an early helmet cover in Desert Dubok was issued. Such cover is easy to identify by the metal snap on the flap for goggles. On the later version there was Velcro, and it was made of nylon. Both early and late desert covers can be bought at the Kruschiki store. In addition to Ukrainian helmets, starting in 2003, some units actively used American PASGT helmets with original covers in American 3-color desert camouflage. According to a veteran's recollection, sometimes the first rotation used American PASGT helmets with Ukrainian cover in Desert Dubok. And in general, judging by the photo from Yushchenko's arrival, or at least one fighter from the 7th Brigade is doing the same, this practice continued throughout the conflict, though rarely. Given how rare early temp helmets are now, for my set I also settled on a PASGT helmet. NBC troops in Kuwait were also seen wearing Soviet steel helmets, but upon arrival in Iraq they were replaced with Kevlar ones. Body armor. The 5th Brigade arrived in Iraq wearing body armor produced by Temp-3000, the name of which I couldn't find out. These vests are more advanced than the Korsar-M, but unlike the Korsar-M3 vest, they have only one utility pouch on the front panel. I'll venture to guess this is the Korsar-M1 or M2, but it is definitely not Panzer. Mostly these vests were olive in color. In any case, the entire 5th Brigade wore olive ones. In photos of NBC troops in Kuwait, black ones also appeared. They later faded to a rusty shade. Starting in 2004, canonical Korsar-M3 vest in Desert Dubok pattern began to be supplied to Iraq. My vest is exactly from 2004 production. Early vests were made from a rather unusual burlap-like material. Later ones were made of nylon. Nylon vests can be easily identified by more pinkish tone. On the outside of the vest there are pockets for class 4 protection steel plates. To prevent the plates from rubbing through the vest, Temp wrapped them in several layers of camouflage fabric.
А потім маленьке звірятко загортає шоколад у фольгу.
But this didn't help much. Covers still wore through, especially for drivers. Anti-fragmentation packages were installed on the inside. They came in colorful covers marked Ktelu, to the body. On the front section, 3 pouches for 2 AK magazines each, 2 grenade pouches, above the pouches a mounting point for the bayonet. On the shoulders there are stops for the weapon sling, backpack straps or load-bearing system. Double cummerbund. The inner elastic one wraps around the torso. The outer one attaches to the front panel. This system was chosen to ensure ventilation of the under-vest space. But due to the unsuccessful adjustment range of the vest, the front panel seriously flaps around. Because of this, fighters either pulled the outer cummerbund all the way over the grenade pouches, or fastened the inner cummerbund behind the back so the front closed tighter, or fixed the cummerbund over the front panel altogether, like the 6B5 in Chechnya. The vest has a built-in, non-removable groin protector that can be tucked under the front panel, as well as a removable neck protection module. On the back there are loops and D-rings, as I was told, for attaching a camelback. I never saw them used, and on another 2004 vest they were absent from the factory. Special thanks to Bush team for helping restore 2 entire vests for this video. One of them was literally a wreck. They completely disassembled and rebuilt it from scratch using fabric from nylon desert Dubok covers. Quite an interesting story. Even after the Korsar-M3 appeared, the early Korsar didn't go away and continued to be used in parallel. Unlike foreign helmets, domestic vests were mostly used. But according to a veteran, it was not trouble to obtain something Western. In photos you can find an American OTV on some officers. There was also this body armor in American desert camouflage. As far as I could find out, it was produced by the American company Second Chance. They were issued in Iraq to coalition countries due to temporary shortage of OTVs. The vest was common among the Poles, but quite rare with the Ukrainian contingent. I managed to find only 2 photographs, with a total of 6 vests. There is also a photo of the vest already in Ukraine. Load-bearing systems. Since the early Korsar was equipped only with 1 small pouch, the issue of carrying equipment was especially acute for the fighters of the first rotation. The Americans provided 3-color desert fabric, and in Ukraine they quickly sewn load-bearing vests. As you see, these are ordinary improvised vests made from uniforms fabric. On the front panel there are 3 AK magazine pouches featuring flaps with Velcro, 2 utility pouches for grenades or first aid bandages, and a mounting point for a bayonet. On the back there are 2 more deep utility pouches. In 2004, Temp began supplying the contingent with the Pustynia 3 load-bearing vests. This is a mesh vest with Cordura pouches in desert Dubok pattern. Yep, that's how they described it in the original documentation. Cordura sounds French, la cordura. On the front panel are 4 pouches for 2 AK magazines each. The pouches close with Velcro and a button, and when the flap is open, the magazines are held by an elastic band. The pouches are offset to the right. As per Soviet manuals, magazines are changed with the right hand. On the left there are 2 grenade pouches, also with button and Velcro. Between the magazine and grenade pouches is the mounting point for the bayonet. In this photo they placed a flashlight there. Above is a medical pouch designed for an S-mark tourniquet and the Soviet bandage, also closes with Velcro and button. To the left is a huge radio pouch. The pouch is enormous. There were no radios of that size in Iraq, so in this pouch soldiers usually carried a water bottle, personal items or extra medical supplies, and the radio was hung on the strap. On the shoulders there are stoppers for backpack straps and weapon sling. Height adjustment is via straps, Velcro and buckles on the shoulders. The width adjustment with 3 straps, Velcro and buckles on each side. On the back an evacuation strap, Ellis-type webbing and loops with buckles at the bottom. According to the manufacturer, this system is for a thermos backpack for water. Yes, exactly, a thermos backpack. That's how they call it. At the bottom are 6 loops for threading a white belt. It is impossible to put on or properly adjust this system alone. Without body armor, it will just hang loose on you, and even belt won't help. This is the most uncomfortable load-bearing system I have ever seen. But with the body armor, it sits somewhat comfortably. Of course, if someone helps you to put it on. As the solution for the early Korsar problem, this was a reasonable piece. And it often continued to be worn with the Korsar-M3. First, the pouches are more advanced. Second, it frees up more space. Note, this fighter integrated the front panel of the load-bearing vest directly into the body armor. In addition to those load-bearing systems, airborne troops also had Soviet PSA Gen 3 chest rigs. Savvy fighters sometimes found Iraqi load-bearing vests or more modern commercial nylon vests. Backpacks. The first rotation was equipped with interesting bergens in Dubok. Later backpacks of a similar form factor were issued in desert coloring. But due to the specifics of the tasks, no one carried backpacks. All gear rode on the vehicles. Equipment. Of course, all fighters were issued Soviet pouches, but given the presence of load-bearing vests and body armor, only pouches that had no analogs on the load-bearing vest or body armor were used. For example, the for sale AK magazine pouch, gathered dust, abandoned, but the SVD magazine pouch was used. The pouch for the Vok grenades was used. Medical bags, officer map cases, Soviet leather holsters for the Makarov pistol. There was also an interesting desert drop-leg Makarov holster produced by Temp-3000, as well as commercial ones bought locally, both nylon drop-leg and leather shoulder holsters. Soviet 6H4 and 6H5 bayonets, although as far as I know they were issued only to the first rotation. ROP and RSP signal flares, individually issued medical items, Soviet bandages, SMART tourniquets, AI-2 first aid kit, and medical bandanas. On helmets fighters wore Soviet dust masks, American SVD-G goggles, or more modern ballistic goggles, if you were lucky. Practically all fighters wore sunglasses. These glasses were issued upon arrival in Kuwait. Fingerless leather gloves were also popular. Despite Temp-3000 also produced covers for Soviet canteens in desert coloration, Soviet canteens were not used in Iraq. There was plenty of water both at the base and on vehicles. Anyone could grab a half or 1.5 liter bottle. Gas masks were also issued, judging by the description, PMK-2, but only their bags found use. It turned out they were ideal for concealed carrying of whiskey. Insignia. I don't want to dwell on this topic, but the 52nd Battalion wore Crimson Ground Forces patch, green chevrons, ranks, and cockades, although in the rest of the 5th Brigade the insignia were sand-colored. Interestingly, the 5th Mechanized Brigades insignia also resembled the Peacekeepers patch from the Bosnia era. Recon and airborne troops wore airborne emblems. You are now seeing the 6th Brigade patch. It is already made in a more Western style. The 7th Brigade had an interesting patch with the encryption Odessa. I think solely because the brigade was under the Southern Operational Command, and part of the training took place in Chabanka. They also had sewn-on collar tabs and sand-colored blood-type patches. Shoulder ranks were brown as well, but some officers simply wore American ranks for some reason. Each battalion also had its own round patch. You can see them on the screen now. This is the patch of the 81st Tactical Group. There was also a NATO ATAN patch, and here a couple more patches from that period. Firearms. Most fighters received folding stock AKS-74. AK-74 with fixed stock was not issued. AKS-74N, compatible with night vision scopes, appeared. AKS-74U was popular with crew members. For reconnaissance, AKM with PBS-1 suppressor, GP-25 underbarrel grenade launchers, PKM and RPK-74 machine guns, Dragunov sniper rifles with PSO-1 scope, RPG-7 grenade launchers, Makarov pistols, and assorted reactive anti-tank grenades. And now let's see how it all looks together. As you've already understood, the equipment I obtained is more suited to 2004-2005, and I divided it into two sets. Okay, comrades, I hope you liked this video. Subscribe to my channel, put like, comment, share this video with your friends. If you want to help channel financially, links are in the description. Now we also have YouTube subscription available for us, and I'll see you next time. Bye.